Hey, it's Mosquito, also known as Chris. Welcome back to the shop. Today I've got the Blue Spruce router plane again, and I just wanted to cover a few more things that I didn't include in my review earlier. So if you haven't seen that already, you can go ahead and watch that up in the corner. I'll put a card and down in the description so you can check that out if you're interested. But this is just gonna kind of be a follow-up. So first we're gonna go through a little bit of a warranty thing. Next, we're going to do a little bit of a race between these two, the Walke-Moore and the Blue Spruce, because I kept kind of comparing them in my head, but I wanted to see which one was actually quicker, but I didn't want to make my review ridiculously long, so I skipped that in that original one, and we'll come back to that one here. And then I was going to take a little bit deeper dive into the blade holding mechanism, and we'll see if we can use a vintage Stanley or a Veritas iron with this one. So let's jump right into that. Okay, so first things first, the warranty thing. So this was actually a preemptive warranty claim, whatever. I didn't actually need it. I'll just read what they had here. So it says, from Blue Spruce Toolworks, we appreciate your support for Blue Spruce Toolworks in the recent router plane purchase. We packaged the blade hardware incorrectly in a few orders and are sending out new hardware packs. The issue was with the screw that held in the blade. It was an 832, not a 632, and did not fit. So that would be the little screw that goes in the bottom of the blade here. For me, that wasn't an issue, but they did include 2 additional screws and yay, another Allen wrench. And then they also included the blade and the spear point. So you get a new post, blade, and a spear point. However, one thing I noticed is this new post is just steel, whereas the one that came with my plane is black. So it looks like it's been, almost look like it's been gun blued or whatever. Anyway, minor difference that probably doesn't make a huge performance impact, but regardless. So it says, in addition, some other customers stated that the blade did not correctly seat in the shaft. Again, it appears only a few went out this way, but we are sending out new blades and shafts out of caution. If your original ones worked, then you have extra blades. If you have any questions, please email blah, 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 blah. It was weird because all of a sudden I had a notification like, hey, thanks for your order. What order? I didn't order anything. So I emailed customer support and I said, hey, I have this order. I already got my router plane and my fence, but I'm kind of curious what's going on. She said, oh, it's just a warranty thing. We had some issues with some of the early items, so we were just going to send out packets to those that already ordered them just in case anybody else was having issues. So the second set of things was basically the package of screws and Allen wrenches that came with the fence. I'm not exactly sure what was up with that because they didn't say anything about that in the letter that they included, but I'm assuming something must have been wrong. Maybe the wrong screw sizes, threads, I don't know. But mine worked, so I don't really need it. But it was just nice that they saw a problem or they heard of a problem and they just decided to go ahead and make sure everybody was taken care of, even if they didn't actually get a complaint from that customer. It's a pretty good proactive approach to finding out that something went wrong. So now that we've covered that warranty thing, let's just take a closer look at converting these things and do a little bit of race to see which one's faster to get reconfigured. Okay, so I've got both the Blue Spruce and the Walke-Moore here set up in what I call standard router mode, so same configuration for both of these. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see how long it takes me to reconfigure both of these into that tenon cutting mode where I had the iron on the end of it. So basically I'm just gonna take it and mount the iron like this on both of them so that I can trim the faces of tenons or whatever you might want to do in that configuration, because I do really like this plane. It is comfortable, it's pretty heavy, I like the way it's made, but I feel like this one is a little bit nicer if you're going to be switching things around over and over again. And I understand that that's not really fair because these Walke-Moore planes, they haven't made them in a while, and even when they did make them, you could barely end up getting one if you were an hour late after they started listing them. But regardless of that, I'm just going to see which one is a little bit easier to configure, and we'll go from there, I guess. On the Walke-Moore, I'm just going to configure this thing to put on the end, and we are going to ready, set, go. So first thing I do is I take this knob off here, and then I loosen up this collar, and then that lets me loosen this, remove this, and then I can take off the depth stop. Then I can lift this up take the iron off. Now this iron, I actually do have to rotate it 90 degrees, but that's really easy because it's toolless. You just use that knob, and we'll put it on the end. We'll put this back on here. Get that reinstalled here. And then we can put our depth stop on. And then we can put this on. And then we can tighten that down. And here we are reconfigured to our tenon mode as soon as I put the knob on. So that wasn't so bad. Don't know how long it was because I'm shooting this, not recording, but I'll put the time up here. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing with the Blue Spruce in ready, set, go. So the thing that I don't like about this is that you have to have this Allen wrench around. And I've had the same complaint about a handful of the Veritas things before too, where in order to redo the stock configurations for like the Boxmaker's plow plane, which there's a link in the description and in a card here if you want to go check that review out. But you need to make sure you keep that wrench handy. Otherwise, you're kind of going to have to go digging and find that stupid thing. And I don't want to have like 8 of these dumb things sitting around. So anyway, that goes on here. I will say that the thing that I like about this a little bit more than I thought I would is the fact that this whole thing is one assembly, which is kind of nice in that when you go to move it, it's all one piece, so you don't have to do all that fumbling around with all the different pieces that we had on the other one. And tighten down. All right, there we are reconfigured. So that time was, so I will put those times here and we can kind of compare those. And honestly, actually doing it, I'm not exactly sure because I've recorded it. I haven't seen the times yet, but I feel like this one might have been faster, but this one was less chaotic. Like this one had a lot of pieces to move in various steps and you got to get them in the right order. This one is basically 2 screws. You reconfigure it, you loosen this, and then you turn the iron. So it's not that it's hard. It's just, again, I don't like the idea that I have to keep this thing around somewhere or go digging through the toolbox to go find the right sized one. But again, can't really buy these. I think this is a very good plane. All right, let's move on. Now we're set up here at the bench with the cutting assembly, and I've got a vintage Stanley, technically keen cutter, and a Veritas iron, and we'll see if that works in here. So the first thing, obviously, I'm going to loosen up the blade lock mechanism, and we will remove this. Go down enough that you can swing that to get that half circle. Okay, so right off the bat, the thing to note is the post that they have here is significantly bigger than the Veritas and certainly the Stanley version as well. So those are a much different size there. Pretty easy to see. But there's a fair bit of adjustment in this blade clamp, so let's see if it works. So I think I'll start with the Veritas. So put that in. One thing that should be pretty obvious, but it's not designed to use these blades, so there's a lot of vertical slop in the depth adjustment mechanism, so that's probably not ideal as far as using it. You're gonna be only having a little tiny corner, and I'll get you moved in here quick. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. There's not a lot of engagement on that depth adjustment with the actual iron itself, and you basically have to tighten the blade clamp all the way down, and then you can kind of see there's still a fair bit of space all the way around it. So it's basically just pinching at the very front and then the very back, which I guess theoretically is how this is being pinched in as well from Blue Spruce, but that one fits because it was designed for the plane, so that makes sense. But it does technically fit, but you have to tighten the clamp down pretty much all the way. And I'll just give it a quick test here. So like I said before, that depth adjustment is really not engaged much at all. So I mean, could you do it in a pinch? I guess, but honestly, I would probably strongly consider skipping using this blade adjustment, because like this is how much slop there is in that. Well, I shouldn't say slop. This is how much bigger the Veritas mechanism has as far as thickness here versus the Blue Spruce. So it's obviously not ideal. But does it work is the question. The issue is you really have to get this crank down quite tight. It does clamp, but because it's only on the front and the back, it can sort of lean left and right just a hair, but it can also twist a little bit when you're getting into corners and edges and stuff when you're cutting. So that's something to be aware of. Again, does it work? Technically, yes. Would I do it every day? Probably not. We will try a vintage iron. Ooh, that one feels even looser. Yeah, so that one's not going to work. So I've got this blade clamp mechanism clamped all the way down, and obviously that's going to be a problem. So vintage iron, at least the one that I have, does not work in the Blue Spruce. All right, so that was the comparison between switching over the Blue Spruce and the Walke-Moore router plane. And when I was filming it, I didn't really know which one was faster, because obviously I couldn't see the timer. I just did that when I was editing the video. The Walke-Moore felt like it was a lot more chaotic, but it still felt quicker. And the Blue Spruce, although didn't feel quite as quick, it seemed a lot more laid back because there was a lot fewer parts that needed to change on this thing. So you basically just end up having to swap the two and then turning the iron 90 degrees, but because of the Allen wrenches and the screws underneath and all that, it just takes a little bit of extra time. Not a big deal, but I just thought that was kind of interesting, and now you know too. And then we also took a look at the irons, and unfortunately the Veritas irons aren't that great in this thing. They do fit, and technically they can work, but the blade adjustment really doesn't work very well. I wouldn't use it anyway, but it is possible in a pinch, if and or until ever these come out in smaller sizes. I appreciate those of you that stuck around this far. Hopefully you found some of this useful, and if there's anything else that you want me to explore on the Blue Spruce plane, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will see if I can do something for that and do another follow-up. Probably don't want to do too many follow-ups because I want to, do something else for a little bit. But anyway, I appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next one. Now I'm going to have to figure out how to get another router plane in here somewhere. Might have to do some reconfiguring.